Today, we will be looking into the topic Excel Power Tools, Power Query for Data
This call is now being recorded.
Transformation. Excel Power Tools, Power Query for Data Transformation. And our speaker for tonight is Mr. Muhsin, Mr. Muhsin Ahmed. So some of us still struggle with using Power Query for data transformation. That challenge you are facing with Power Query is about to end tonight. Hope we have our writing materials ready to jot down our learnings. So I want to see our reactions. Please, let's react with our favorite emoji so I would know that we are all together. React with your favorite emojis so I'll know you are ready. All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kintayoraji. Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, the topic to be discussed is Excel Power Tools, Power Query for Data Transformation. And we have with us here Mr. Muhsin Ahmed. Some of us already know who Mr. Muhsin Ahmed is, and some of us don't know who Mr. Muhsin Ahmed is. Okay. I would first like to introduce what we do at ID Analytics. So at ID Analytics, we empower individuals and organizations to harness the transformative power of data through tailoring training and consulting, ensuring they thrive in today's analytics-driven landscape. About our speaker, Mr. Muhsin Ahmed is a Microsoft certified trainer. He has five plus business intelligence experience. He has trained over 15,000 participants, including senior management on Power Platform, Power Apps, Power Automate, Power BI, Big Data, Microsoft Office tools, and advanced presentation skills for business. Mr. Muhsin Ahmed has built robust analytics system solutions for clients across various industries, ranging from logistics, telecommunication, financial institutions, construction within and outside Nigeria. He is a community technical officer, Nigeria Power Platform User Group. He is also the co-lead Power Platform User Group, Oyo State. Mr. Muhsin Ahmed is the lead facilitator at ID Analytics. And we all know that ID Analytics is the brain behind this webinar, having us together for us to learn. So Mr. Muhsin Ahmed is ID analyst himself. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Mr. Muhsin Ahmed, an exceptional man in the field of data. You are welcome, sir. You have the mic, boss.
Okay, thank you so much, Consuela, for that warm introduction. So I'm just going to share my screen right away. 1 second. Yeah, show my screen. All right, welcome everybody to tonight's webinar. Thanks for joining. It's a pleasure having every single person on the call, having us around. Tonight we want to discuss Excel Power Tools. So in Excel, there are quite a number of tools that people use, and some are not so much that popular. But depending on where you are in your Excel journey, and depending on what you do from time to time, that would to a very large extent determine or decide the kind of things that you'll be exposed to in Microsoft Excel. For Excel, we have what we call the power tools. Do we have some of us who could go to the chat very quickly? Just tell me what you think of the Excel power tools. What are they? Do you know them? Just a quick survey on the chat, everybody. Do you know the Excel power tools? If you do, what are they? Just mention a few that you know. Quickly. Maybe someone will win something. Maybe. So let's see if you get some responses in a minute or 30 seconds. No responses yet. We're closing this. Someone placed his phone maybe at the window side and they are there eating their noodles, which is good. Oluwarotimi, you said Power BI. Okay. Koyum Power Query. Okay. Thanks. Those are good tries. Yeah, Koyum, you're on track. So when we talk about Excel Power Tools, essentially we are talking about some tools that were initially not natively in Excel. So Excel as a spreadsheet application has some inherent functionalities. Sometimes around 2010, if I'm not mistaken, so Microsoft came about some additional tools that they did not first, initially, they did not bring them into Excel natively. They came in as add-ons, which means your Excel would serve you to a large extent, but if you need some additional functionalities, you could use this as additional tools with what you already have in Excel to enhance or to extend the possibility of what you're able to achieve in Excel. So that is the idea behind the Power Tools. So when we talk about Power Tools in Excel, we have the Power Query, which Koyum rightly mentioned. We have Power Query, we have Power Pivot. You know the pivot table, but there is Power Pivot, and we have Power View, we have Power Map. Maybe there are a few other ones, but these are the most popular. So we have Power Query, Power Pivot, Power View, and Power Maps. So from these four, Power Query, Power Pivot, and Power View, that's the first three, they were the tools that eventually came together that gave birth to what we have as Power BI today. So in 2014, when Microsoft conceptualized the idea of Power BI, they brought together these first three tools, these first three power tools, and they gave birth to Power BI before a lot of enhancements then came by Power BI along the line. So these tools, initially, like I mentioned, they were add-ons, so which means that if you were using older versions of Excel, maybe you're still using a version of 2010, 2016, up to 2016, you may have to download this set of tools that I mentioned. You may have to download them as separate add-ons and see how you can bring them into your Microsoft Excel. But for today, for versions that are more recent, you don't need to do that. Some of these tools are now natively sitting within Excel, so which means that they are now available within Excel if you're using a more recent version of Excel, and by that you do not necessarily need those add-ons. But for today's class, we are focusing on Power Query. So Power Query as a tool is not only available in Microsoft Excel. Anyone who is coming from some level of background in Power BI, you would be familiar with Power Query. You would have used Power Query a couple of times. In fact, there's no way you would have used Power BI at all without having used Power Query, because that functionality that enables you to bring in data into your Power BI is Power Query in itself. So Power Query is available in Excel, like we're going to see tonight. Power Query is also available in Power BI. It is available in Power Apps. It's available in Power Automate and a couple of other tools. And when we talk about Power Query online, so we'll be talking about data flows, which some people will have some extensive knowledge about Power BI, about the Power BI service and what is possible over there. You'll be aware of what data flows are. So Power Query in Excel or Power Query generally, they are from the ETL tools. When we say ETL, we mean tools that enable you to extract your data from wherever source is sitting on, that then also assist you with transformation of that data so that you get it to be report ready, and then it also helps you with the loading of that data to a desired destination. So think about it. Whenever you want to work with a data set that will need you to be plugged into from somewhere, maybe your data is sitting in SQL Server, for example, or your data is sitting online on the web. We're going to see an example of that, hopefully, tonight if time permits, or some other sources that you may want to think of, maybe Access Database, maybe your Oracle, wherever it is. That tool that enables you to connect to it, to see that data and bring it in, is your Power Query. And then once you bring it in, you may want to do some level of cleaning. So some people call it data cleaning, some call it data cleansing, some call it data transformation, some will say data massaging. Whatever word you're giving to it, whatever terminology you're giving to it, essentially what everybody is saying is that we want to get the data to be ready in a format that is useful for reporting. So all of this series of activities that you would do in that wise to get the data in that format that you need, all of those are transformation, which would come under the T in the ETL. Yes, I will zoom into that, don't worry. Then the L is now when you're done with your transformation, think about it, you're done with your cooking in your kitchen, you need to now dish it out to take it to the dining room where it will be served and eaten. Then you would be loading the data. That is the L part of it. So if you now want to work with Power Query in Microsoft Excel, where would you find Power Query? That is the first question. So depending on the version that you're using, if you're using any version from 2016 upward, I think you'll find it in the same place. Earlier than that, you may see an additional tab here for Power Query. So if you go on YouTube and you're watching some very old videos on Power Query on YouTube, you probably will see somebody have an additional tab here, the same way they have Power Pivot here. You see them have an additional tab here that says Power Query. So that is because at that point, the person installed Power Query as an add-on, so it came in as a new tab. But for us, because we're using a more version of Excel, we wouldn't see that as a new tab. Rather, where we would find Power Query is if we go here to the Data tab. When I go to the Data tab, every single thing that you see in this group, this Get and Transform group, every single thing here, they are Power Query related. Also down to this extension that you see here for queries and connections. So it means that whenever you are working in Excel and your work gets you to do anything within this place that I have carved out, then it means that you're working with Power Query in Excel. So if you've ever done something along this side, then somebody asks you that, have you used Power Query before in Excel? You tell them yes, because every single thing that you have here, they are in some ways connected to Power Query. So we have an instance we want to look at tonight. Two major case studies we want to look at tonight. I will try to be as brief as possible with them so that we can see how we can get some value from this session tonight. We have this first workbook. So this workbook here, it's a schedule of our staff members. So we have an employee database. So this is all of our employees. And then we want to know what the salary figures will be like. The basic salary, housing, transport, NHF, NHIS, and pensions. We want to know what these numbers would be. But we have another worksheet, which is called the salary structure. So on this worksheet, we have the cadre for all of our staff members. We have the cadre for all of our staff members here. And then for each of the cadres, we have what will be the basic salary, what will be the housing, the transport, and like that. And so what we want to do is on our employee DB, we want to be able to populate all of this for all the staff members, and those numbers will come from the salary structure. This is a typical case for lookup in Excel for those of us that we're familiar with that. But again, is this. So let's attempt to do a lookup. So if I want to do this lookup, one thing that might happen is this. Somebody might want to do a VLOOKUP like this. So this is not a lookup class. So, and then I will be using the cadre as the lookup value, because that is the key. That is what is common on both sides that I want to pull something from. So I'll use that. And then my table array, I've already given a name to the table array. I call it salary. So which is a way to name ranges in Excel. So we call that named ranges. So I've named that table area that I'm going to return something from. I've given it a name, so I'm able to reference the name. And then I know that on that table, the basic salary, just so that we're sure, if I come here to this salary, so everything here, I've given it a name. So you see what I have highlighted here, everything that I've got highlighted. If I just come here to the name box, you see that it says salary. So which is the name that I've given to it. Another way to find out is if I zoom out of this and I come here to the name box, I click on this drop down, you see that we have a salary name here. If I click, it highlights the area that I've named salary. And I know that on this salary table, basic is the second column. So if I want to return something for basic, it means that I will be returning something on the second column. If I come back to the employee DB and I do a VLOOKUP here, so manager is my lookup value, salary is the table array, column index number is 2, and then I'll be doing an exact match. So I do this, enter. So this gives me the basic salary for a manager. But the question now is, for somebody who is probably just starting out, you may want to do this for every single column. So imagine you want to pull this for 20 columns. Maybe you have 20 salary components that you want to populate. It means you would go a column per time. That is not so efficient. Somebody might want to say that, oh, for me, I'm much more efficient with Excel. I know a lot more Excel. So what I want to do is I can do called a VLOOKUP, something like this. And I say that the local value is this. The table array is salary. And for the column index number, I already know that I need to find out the numbers for this guy, which is their position on the other side. If I come here to look at it for the moment, I see that basic, housing, transport, it looks like they follow the same pattern, except for NHIS and NHF, which are flipped. So if I come back here and I insert a row at the top here, I know this is 2, 3, 4, this is now 6, 5, 7. So those are the positions on the table array. So someone might want to be a bit clever and want to say that I do equal to VLOOKUP. Then I'm saying I want to look up manager again. The table array is still salary. All right. And then if you have any questions as I go on, please just document them. Hopefully we have some 5 minutes at the tail end to take questions. So for the column index number, there is the concept of, there are a couple of ways to do this. You may want to use the match. You may want to do whatever you want to do. But I think there is one that not many people talk about, which is also very good, which is the concept of using array literals. What does that mean and how does it work? So let me show something first. This is not what you want to do, but again, it's just what it is. So let's say that I want to create 1, 2, 3 on 3 columns. So I can do something like this. I can do 1, 2, 3 like this. But these numbers are separate. They are standalone. So what do I mean that they're standalone? Excel do not see them as a single thing. But if I want to create this 1, 2, 3 as a single thing, I want Excel to see them as a single entity. What I would do is I can highlight the 3 columns like this, and I do equal to, and then I introduce what is called an array literal. So I do a curly bracket, 1, 2, 3, and I close the curly bracket. But now to make this work, so that this 1, 2, 3 would spread out on the number of cells that I have highlighted, I'll need to press Ctrl Shift Enter. So when I press Ctrl Shift Enter, so this now, you see, if you're looking at my formula bar, you see that the input, it's only sitting where 1 is sitting, and the same thing is repeated for where 2 is, the same thing is repeated for where 3 is. So, but these 3 cells, they're actually a single cell to Excel in some manner. How do we validate that? If I come here to this one and I press delete where I have 1, you see that 1 is gone. If I come to this one and I press delete, you see that I have a message which tells me that you cannot change part of an array. So which means these 3 columns, they are seen as one thing to Excel. Question is, if you ever find yourself in any situation like this, how do you then delete these 3? What you need to do is to highlight the 3 and you delete them. But some other instances, you don't even know how many cells are in the array literal. So you're thinking that maybe it's from here, you try to delete, it doesn't work. So what you can do is just stay anywhere within where you have the array literal, press Ctrl G. So that takes you to the go to special. You click on special, and then you can ask it to select the current array. So if you select the current array and I do okay, it analyzes the entire thing, I can press delete and you're off. So that same principle of array literal is what we want to use here. So I do quarter VLOOKUP. So this is the lookup value, and then table array is salary, column index num. Then I will now put in the numbers that I have at the top: 2, 3, 4, 6, 5, 7. I close my array literals, and then for the range lookup, I do 0. But this is not going to work. Why? Because I did not select the entire. If I hit enter here, okay, yeah, somehow it worked. But again, is that before now, this was not supposed to work. So because if you do not select the entire area that you want that you want the result to go into, it wasn't gonna work. But now we have the result. But what happens? Let's say that we complete this and we now have a few more employees. You need to manually go in there to pull your formula down. You don't want to keep doing that every now and then. So which is a reason why you may want to use Power Query to implement a case like this. So let's see how we're going to do that. So I'm gonna go out of this. I'll close this workbook. Let me open a blank one. And then I go in here, I close this. So now we want the result to be on this workbook. So what I would do is that I'll come here to data. If I come here to data, now the data that I want to use, that I want to get us the result, is sitting on another workbook. So I come here to get data, and I say that I'm going to pick my data from a particular file. So here we have different places you can pick data from. So if your data is sitting on a database, imagine that you have an assignment to analyze a data set that is sitting on SQL Server. So it means you can use Excel to analyze data from SQL Server. You can use Excel to analyze data from Oracle, from MySQL, from Postgre. All of these are possible using Power Query. So the data that you work with essentially doesn't have to be sitting in Excel alone. Your data can be anywhere and you'll be able to work with it. So if I come here to file, I come here to from workbook, because I know that my data is sitting on an Excel workbook. So I come here, my data is here on merging, yeah, and I click on import. So when I click on import, for people that are familiar with Power BI, you would already know that we normally would have this navigator experience. So this navigator experience is just a case of Power Query asking you, which of these files, I can see in the file that you pointed to, I can see a lot of things. Which of them do you want me to use? Or which of them do you want to work on? That is what this just means. So when you look at this now, you see that Power Query can see that in this, Taiwo, you have a question? If it's a question, please drop on the chat. If it's something else.
Yes, I would ask after we are done, sir.
Yeah, all right. So we have Power Query can see a couple of things. And from the things that Power Query can always see is within an Excel workbook, Power Query can see the worksheet. Power Query can see tables. So if you have part of the worksheet that have been named as tables, Power Query will see it. Power Query can also see named ranges. So if you have some part of your data that has been given some specific names, Power Query will see them as well. So that is an example of the salary that you see here. So salary is a named range that is coming off the salary structure. So it's apparently the same thing. So now, if I want to see the actual data that is sitting in any of these, what you just need to do is to click on it. You get a preview of what the data looks like. This preview doesn't necessarily show you the entire thing every single time. It depends on the volume of your data. If your data is too large, the preview will be truncated, but it's just going to show you a few rows that will give you an idea of what the data is like. So, but for our case, I know that employee DB, this is the original table that I want to populate, and I have the salary structure, which holds the actual salary that we want to use to populate our employee DB. So I will need these two tables. So what I would do is, because I need two tables, If I leave it this way, I will only be able to select one table at a time. But because I need more than one, what I would do is I would enable this option here that says select multiple items. Once I enable this option, you see now that I have the check boxes here. So I can select employee DB and then I can select salary structure. So those are the two tables that I need, or two part of the data set that I need. Once this is done, then you see that at the bottom here, we have a couple of options. So you have the load button, we have transform data, and we have cancel. If I click on load, what will happen is for the tables that I selected, Power Query will just create a replica of the two tables and put them on separate worksheets, which will be the same thing as what we have in the original files. That's not what we need. So what we need is we want to perform some magic on these two tables so that it becomes one and it gives us the information that we need from both ends. And so I'm going to choose the option of transform data. So if I click on transform data, this is what will now launch a separate window, which is called the Power Query Editor window. So that has launched on a separate screen for me. I'm just going to bring that here. So this is the Power Query Editor window. One thing you will realize is that the interface is almost the same for every single Microsoft tool that you ever have to work with. The interface is similar. At the top, we have the different tabs. We have the different tabs at the top. There is the Home tab, there is the Transform tab, Add Column, and the View. And under each of them, we have different buttons. So today, it's more of just to show us what is possible. Maybe some other times, we'll look at a bit more side of these things so that we understand lots more what is possible within Power Query. So what do we want to do here? We have our employee table, employee DB. At the left, just a quick introduction to the interface. On the left side, we have the queries pane. So we have the employee DB and the salary structure. So every single table that you load into Power Query, you'll see them come inside the queries pane here. Then at the center here, you see a preview of the data set at the center. So for every single data, every single query that you click on here, you see a preview of it at the center here. And then we have a formula bar. So this is a formula bar. If I just clean this for now, this that you see here is the formula bar. And what the formula bar is for is to, number one is that Power Query has its own native language. Power Query itself has its own native language. Unlike Excel, Excel is a functional, it's a language that lives on functional programming, or it lives on a functional language, so to put, which means that for every single thing that you want to do in Excel, you only need to do what is called a function call. All actions have been put behind certain functions. So if you want to add up some numbers, you just need to call on the sum function, and that would enable you to add up a list of numbers. The same thing if you want to do an average and the like that. But when it comes to Power Query has a separate language that it works with, which is the M language. M language is the language of Power Query, or you hear people call it M code. And M is the short form for mashup. So mashup is the language for Power Query. Many times people ask the question that, oh, we in this data space, does it mean that we need to keep learning all of these things? For Power Query at the start, up to intermediate level, you may not necessarily have to learn the M language, because what Power Query helps you do is that Power Query only needs you to go on the GUI, that's the graphical user interface, and click on certain buttons there. When you click on certain buttons, Power Query will translate whatever button you have clicked to an action that is translated to a code before Power Query then executes it. I'll show us what I mean. So if I come here to the right side, here we have a very powerful pane here, which is called the applied steps. So these applied steps, this is where Power Query records every single action that you perform on any file that you are launching Power Query from within. Every single thing that you perform is recorded under the applied steps. And here is what Power Query uses to do the kind of automation that you're going to see much later. If I come here to the source step, that was the first thing that happened. If I click on the source step, look at what happened. What Power Query did with the source step was Power Query used a function here, excel.workbook. And this is a way to also learn some bit of the M code. So you get to be a bit familiar with the M code by looking at the different steps within your transformation and stuff. And here, Power Query asked me to navigate. If you remember, Power Query asked me to navigate to where the file was, and this is the file path. And that function is what Power Query used to connect to the file. So that came in as the source step. We did not write this function ourselves. Power Query wrote it by after we have clicked on the button that we are ready to connect to a particular file. So that is how Power Query gets to continue all of this. So now all of these steps have been performed. For us now, what we want to do is this. We want to be able to pull in all of the salary information from the salary structure. We want to be able to pull them in into the employee DB. So what I would do first is this, because these empty columns, they would have been useful if we were writing the calculation ourselves in Excel, but they are not useful here anymore. So what I will do is I can highlight the first three columns that I need. Can I highlight the first three columns? So I click on the first column like this, and then I hold my shift key to click on the third column. So if I highlighted the first three columns, those are the three columns that I need, and I want to delete every other column. So I can do a right click, and I see a couple of options here. Part of the options that you would see is to remove other columns. And interestingly, one thing with Power Query is that Power Query is highly intuitive. So whatever you're seeing just tells you to a large extent what the action that will be performed would be. So I click on remove other columns. So this is clean. I've removed other columns. Then what I will do now is that I want to now bring in this different salary components that I have on the salary structure. I want to bring them into the employee DB. So Power Query has a button that you will see at the far right, which is the merge queries. So think about the merge queries as your joins. So if you're coming from an SQL background, you understand joins, you understand how joins work. In Power BI 2, you probably would have done some joins. So joins generally is what you do when it comes to merging. So now I can come here to this merge query. I have two options. I can either merge these queries such as they are, so which would replace or override whatever query that I have clicked on, or I merge queries as new, which is a case of I want to keep my original queries, but I want to create a new query that will be the merge version of the original queries. So I'll do merge queries as new. For merge queries as new, you have this window. So there is a left table as such, and now it's asking me to select the second table. So I will select salary structure as the second table, and then I need to now specify the common column, just like you would have done with your VLOOKUP, the column that holds your key. So I'll do CADA to CADA. So that's what I'm using, and I'm doing the left outer. So all of these details are not important for now. Then I click on OK. So when I do that, you notice now that I have a new query, which is called merge one. So this merge one has the same thing that I have on employee DB, the first three columns, they are here in merge one. And this salary structure has been compressed into an additional column here. So what I would do here is to now expand this to see all of the columns that are coming from salary structure. You can select whatever column that you want here. One column that we don't want is the CADA, because we already have a CADA column here. We don't want it to come again from the simple salary structure, rather. And then use original column name as prefix. We don't want that as well. What it means, if you don't turn it off, is that every single column that you see here will now be something like salary structure dot basic, salary structure dot housing, and like that. So what I would do, once I've selected all the columns that I need, use original column name as prefix, I will check that box, I can click on OK. So now we have all of those salary numbers, they've come in as such. Then I can just name this as maybe consolidated or something like that, whatever you want to name it. Once I'm done with this, on the Home tab, I have this option here to close and load. If I use this option, close and load, It's going to load these three tables into three separate worksheets. But that's not what I need. I don't need to replicate data. I don't need to create data duplicate. So I don't need to bring in employee DB. I don't need salary structure. Those are the original data set. Just what I need is the consolidated. So what I would do is to click on this drop down, and then I will say close and load to. When I select close and load to, that gives me this window. So in this window now, I have a couple of options. The load to table, that is the default. So whenever you click on close and load, Power Query loads all of your queries into tables. So if you have 20 queries there, it means you will have 20 tables on 20 worksheets if you use that option. And you can load to a pivot table report, pivot table chart, and stuff. But for this case, I'm just going to create a connection. Only create connection means that you don't want to load the physical table the way it is, but you want Power Query to know that that data still exists and that Excel should know that the data is somewhere. So it's more like saying that the data has been cached and it's saved in memory, but you're not bringing that into a physical workbook. So a case like this is something that you will do in Power BI. You just right click on a query and you say that you want to disable load. So that's the option, but that option is not in Excel. So this is the route you go in Excel. So I click on OK. When I click on OK, now you see that on my workbook, there is nothing on this workbook. I have an empty workbook. But if you look at the right side, I now have two queries. I have the employee DB, I have the salary structure, and I have consolidated. So consolidated is the only one I want to load. So I can now come here to consolidated. I do a right click and I say load to for this guy. So I want to load this to the table, and then I want the table to be here. So if I click OK now, then the consolidated will now be loaded. So I have this as a consolidated. What then is the interesting thing about this? Assuming now we have new employees. So if I go back to my original data, if I go here to, I think it's this one, imagine. So if I go back in here, so this is the worksheet that we worked on. So let's say now we now have new employees. So these three employees, they are new employees. I copy this and then I come back here and I put this here. So I've added three new employees. So look at what we currently have. So the last person that we have here for now is Peter Obi. So we have how many items here? This is 13. Okay, I think I probably loaded it. Okay, so it's gonna come in as the same thing. But let me just rename this. So let's say that this person is Muhammadu Buhari. Muhammadu Buhari, and then I have this person as Sheyi Makinde, and then I have this person as Toby Thomas. So these are our new employees. If I save this file now, I save this file, I click on close, and I come here. So when I come in here now, what I can do is I can now do a right click on this, and I say refresh. And immediately I did refresh. You see now that Muhammad Buhari came in here, Sheyi Makinde and Toby Thomas, those that I added, and all of the salary details have been populated. So this is the kind of automation that Power Query enables you. If you have done this natively, the usual Excel way, you probably will need to go on there and extend your table somehow and do maybe 1 to 3 steps. But if you're doing this in Power Query, what you only need to do is once your actual data is updated, just come in here, do a refresh, and everything comes in. Case study 1 completed. So let's look at the second case study very quickly. So I'm just gonna close this guy. Let me not close it yet. So we have a second case study we want to look at very quickly. So we have this data set, which is a typical scenario that you might find yourself in, especially at your place of work. So you have this data set here, which you probably, this is how you track your sales numbers in the business. So for every single month, you track the different transactions the month it happened, the transaction date, the customer, the product that was bought, the cost, the discount, and the amount that was paid in naira. So this is how you track this. And every single month in the year, you go on to create a new worksheet. So we have a worksheet for February and we have a worksheet for March with their different sales data. So one thing you might want to do is you can actually consolidate this in Excel too. You know, Excel has functions like the V stack, the H stack. So you can write a V stack to consolidate this, but it sometimes it's just good to explore the flexibility that comes with working with Power Query. So let's try to do this consolidation in Power Query and see how this also will update when we had new data into this. So what I would do with this is, for this case, I want this to be the consolidated data. I want it to be on the same file. So if I want it to be on the same file, it means that I will launch Power Query from within this file. So what I would do is I go the same route. By now, you already know that Power Query can be launched from the data tab. So I go in data, I come here to get data. But remember, if I go to file and I say from Excel workbook, Power Query will be expecting me to point to an Excel workbook, which I don't have. The Excel workbook that I don't want to work with is the same workbook that I'm sitting within. So I don't want that to happen. So I don't want to from here go somewhere else and start loading another data that I don't need into this file. So what I would do in that instance is I can come here from other sources, and from here I will say that it should just open a blank query. So blank query just means that open Power Query for me without loading any data specifically, but it will be open Power Query from within the current file. So I do blank query. So this is coming up. All right. So we have our blank query here. You see that it says query one, nothing has happened here, and the formula bar is blinking. So if you remember, when we looked at the source step for the previous one that we wrote, Power Query used a particular function, which is excel.workbook. So excel.workbook is the function that you use when you have a particular file sitting somewhere and you want to point to it. You want Power Query to go read that file, you use excel.workbook. But for our case, because the data is sitting right within the actual file that we are working with, we'll do excel.current workbook, which is a way of telling Power Query that look at the current workbook that I'm sitting in and make an item, itemize all of the tables, all of the named ranges that you can see in there. So I press tab, I open and close the bracket, and I hit enter. This did not work. Why? Because I did not start with the equality sign. So I do equal to, and then we have this. So now Power Query is able to see that I have 3 tables, and the names of those tables are Jan sales, Feb sales, and March sales. So like I mentioned, Power Query would see tables, named ranges. If you're going this route, it will not see the worksheets per se. So if you want to see the actual data that is sitting within each of these, I can click on the space beside this table within the cell, and at the bottom here, you see the actual data that is sitting in there. So now, this that we'll see here, this column here, we actually do not need it. So I can take out this column by just clicking on it, do a right click, and I say remove. For this one now, I can now use this button that you see here. There's this button. You notice that this button is not the usual arrow that we are familiar with. Let me come back here. If I go a step backwards, you see the arrow that is here. This is the filter arrow. This one is a filter arrow, the one you are used to in Excel. You see that this one here is double-ended, which means it is for expansion. You want to expand into the data that is in that cell. So if I go back to the step, now I click on this guy, I uncheck this to use the original name, and I click on OK. By that, I've already consolidated all of the data in the 3 worksheets. So which is, if I come here to this column, I see I have Jan, Feb, March data, and all of the data are already sitting here. 30 records of data. Super. So what I might want to do here is just to correct the data type. So I can correct the data types here. This one should be date, but I can try to use something. So if I highlight all of these columns, Control A, I come here to transform tab and I say detect data type. So if I do detect data type, so Power Query has detected that all of these are text, and then this one it's a number, this one it's a decimal, this one is also a decimal, which is good. And then for this date, I actually want to make it just date. So I click on that and make it just date. I want to replace current. Yeah. So we have all our data consolidated already. So which means we are done. So what I would do is I go back to Home tab and I say close and load. So if I do close and load, remember, Power Query immediately pours the data into this worksheet for me. So as query one. Now, let's say now we now have new data for a new month. So this is the month of April now. So if I copy this data for April and I go into main, I come in here and I paste the data for April, and then I name this April like so. So what will happen here is if I go here to my query one, look at what happens. If I go here to my query one, at the moment we have 31 rows of data here. If I do a right click and I say refresh, we have how many rows now? We have 72 rows of data. April data has come in, but we now have more data in some ways. So now this is what is happening here. So April is actually just 10 rows as well. So what I was expecting is that this data is only meant to increase from 30 to 40, but this has increased to 72. What happened? Let me show you what happened. So I'll go back to Power Query very quickly. So if you want to go back to Power Query a couple of ways, you can go here to the queries and connection pane. If you do not see the queries and connection pane, maybe for whatever reason it's closed, go here back to data and you click on queries and connection here. That opens back that pane. So I can double click on this, or you right click and say edit. So now, if you look at the applied steps, let's go back to the source. So on the source step, this is what we have as Excel.current workbook. But if I do something, if I do a refresh on this, if I refresh this preview, refreshing this preview now, you see that it says that we have January data, February, March, April, and query one itself. So it means that in some ways, Power Query is appending the original data back to the result, if you understand what I mean. So this query one was never there, on our workbook. So Power Query, now because I did a refresh of what is on that workbook, Power Query is able to now see that we now have a query one, which is already a consolidation of January, February, March, and April. Power Query has seen it again. So which means every single time that I try to refresh this table, well, that I try to refresh query one, Power Query will be refreshing that and reloading query one alongside itself, which is something you may not want to do. So what I would do here is just to create a quick filter here. I do a text filter and I say that I only want to consider, so I would insert this query here, or insert the step. So what is this saying? This is saying that what is asking, what do I want to include? I want to filter rows and keep rows where the name column does not contain query. Where this row, this column name does not contain query. If I do okay, you see that that query is gone. So which means whenever I get to work on this, there will be no instance where the consolidated data would ever be considered again. So there will not be duplicates of data. This trick will be something that you definitely would, yeah, if you uncheck query one, that would also work. But just imagine that there is an instance where you have to, maybe there is, for whatever reason, there is another query within that particular workbook. Maybe you use it to consolidate data per quarter. So what that would mean is because you have another query within that, that would still be considered in your consolidation. So, but if you already say that anything that contains query, so even if someone creates something query one or query two or query three, all of those will automatically be filtered out because you have not hard coded your filter options. So if I go back here now, change type. So this is what we have here. Let's see the number of rows that we have now. So we have just 40 records, which is correct. And now I can do close and load. So I've loaded this now, and now you see that we have just 41 rows. So if I bring in May data now, it will be the same. But let's do something a bit more sophisticated, which is like a scenario that you might find yourself in. Imagine that now the amounts that we see here is the Naira amount. And let's say that in our own business, we trade in multiple currencies. We trade in dollars, we trade in some other currencies. So whatever amounts that we see here, we want to immediately see the equivalent in dollar as of today. So what we might want to do is let me do something. So we have a URL that we might want to always use for something like that. So it's an open source thing that someone created, so which is super valuable. Although this is most times going to give you the exchange rate as of today, and for almost all of the currencies that you may want to think of. So what I would do here is to pick this URL. I pick this URL, and then I go back to Power Query. So here I can do right click, and then I say edit. Now I want to create another query that would pick the data from that URL. So I can do new source, other sources, blank query, or no, I don't need to do a blank query. I can just do from web because the data is coming from the web. So I come back here and then I do new source, online, other sources, yes, from the web. So, and then I'll paste the URL here. Whatever URL that you're using that is picking data from the web, you need to validate that that URL is actually correct. Because if on your web or your browser, the URL is returning an error, it definitely will return an error here. So I do okay. You might be asked sometimes for authentication, whatever it is. So if it's a website that is publicly available for scraping, you would not have an issue. Just use the anonymous option and that would be fine. So this is what we have here. Then what I would do here, this is a record, and within this record, that is where we actually have all of the data that we see on the website. All of them are sitting within this record. So what I can do is to turn this into a table. So I've converted this to a table. Row number one is the dates, because if you remember here, this is the first part of the JSON, so which is the first row, and every other thing they come in the second row. That is what you see here. So row number one is for the dates. So we don't need that. So I can come in here and I say I want check date, or I use another option to say that I want to remove top row. Maybe I want to remove the first row. So now this is what I have. I have this guy, so which is the record that holds all of the exchange rates. So what I can do now is I can come here to expand this. So you see that we have all options of the currencies, but I know that the only thing I need here is NGN, which is Naira. So I can select NGN, that's the only thing I need, and I click on OK. So now this is the NGN amount, and that is all I need. So what I can do from here is, because I want to use this in a calculation. What is a calculation? I want to be able to look at all of these amounts, anything that is in this amount column, multiplied by that to get the USD amount. That is what I want to do. So I need that to be in a scalar value, kind of, so not on a table format. So whenever you want to do that, what you might want to do is to go to that value that you need. There's a trick here. Go to the value that you need, right click on it, and you say drill down. So when I do drill down, So Power Query drills down into that actual value. So now it's giving me the actual value as a constant. And that's the only thing I'm seeing. I no longer see a table. And then from here, but this is the $1 to Naira conversion. So it's telling us that as of today, a dollar is equivalent to 1536 Naira. If I want to know the equivalent of 1 Naira in USD, what I will need to do is to come here and I do 1 divided by this. It's just like finding the reciprocal, some mathematics there. So if I click on this, so now 1 Naira is equivalent to 0.006 USD. This is the equivalent value. So one thing I can do now is to go back to my query one, and then I want to create an additional column here. So I'll come here to add column, and then I will say a custom column. This is a simple calculation I want to write here, nothing too fancy. So I say this USD amount, and I'm picking the amount column. You just double click, multiply it by, remember that we have this USD query, which holds our USD conversion rate. So I just reference that. This is it here. I select USD and I do OK. So now, because I'm connecting to data on the web, so it's asking for, is trying to authenticate for privacy. I can ask it to ignore privacy issues and save. Now, if you look at what we have, so for every single transaction amount that you see here in Naira, this is the equivalent amount in USD. So I can just make this currency. So it is 4 decimal places max. So I can click on this guy. Okay, it's coming out here. So then I do convert this to currency and like that. So we're good. Then I can come back here to home, close and load. So because I didn't disable load for this USD, you might want to keep it, you might not want to, but I don't want to keep it. So I just do load to only create connection, and that will tell me that it's going to delete the data. So I'm okay with that. I can delete the worksheet as well. And now for my query, you see now that we now have the USD amount. So let's bring in our data for May. If I go here to additional data, I copy May data. And now I go back here, I create a worksheet, I paste May data here, and I call this May, and I come back here to query. Take a look at this. We have 41 rows here. If I do a right click now, and I do refresh, all of those transformations would happen. So now May data is in, and then all of those calculations repeat themselves. So this is some very quick introduction into what you can achieve in Power Query. The options are endless. You have so much possibilities to explore when it comes to Power Query in Excel. In fact, a lot of things that people struggle with, especially data cleaning, some level of automating your calculations, Power Query will really come in handy in doing helping you achieve some of those things. This is where I think we should draw the curtain. Like I mentioned, this might be not a one-part series. We may have it for some times, different times, getting back to look at some things in Power Query again. Then looking at some point, we also look at some things in Power Pivot. At some point, we also look at some things, Power Pivots essentially and Power Query, just so that you can see how you could also go on to enhance some things that you do in Microsoft Excel. At this time, I think it will be fine to take questions if we have that. Over to you, when you consular.
Okay. Thanks so much, ID analyst, for the amazing session. I learned a lot from the session, and I believe every one of us also learned one or two from this session. So, do we have any question? Is there any question?
Yes, yes. I have like two questions. One is that because I see it was connecting a URL to the Power Query to work on the reports directly. So I wanted to ask if we can connect CRM. How can we go about connecting a CRM? Like, all this app, all this company that has like their CRM app. How can we connect such reports to this Power Query? And the second question is that this one is a problem I faced recently with Excel, on Excel rather. So I was trying to bring in, like, using a VLOOKUP to bring in data from another sheets into a new sheet, but I want the data, for example, let's say in sheet A, we have amounts, we have reference, and that reference has a code, like all this transaction listing code to it, and amounts. And the code is the reference code is like the invoice number, and then the other unique code is for the GL, like transaction listing code. So I wanted to do a formula to bring in amounts from sheet B that will identify the unique reference and also identify the unique GL at once. But I wasn't able to do that. I don't know why, for some reasons. And I want to believe that this thing is doing with the Power Query. The reports must have like the same structure, or can they have different structure and we can just merge it together with Power Query? So those are just my questions.
Okay, three questions there. Number one is there are two operations that we've performed tonight. So we have merging and merging, my spelling is not correct. Merging, and we have appending. So goes, merging expands your table towards the columns. So it means that when you merge, you would have more columns. So you are bringing data that will fit into the side of an existing data, a case where you would have done a lookup. That was the first example that we saw. The second operation that we did is what is called appending. So appending is like a union operation, which means you're stacking data one on top of the other, which is the case of the monthly data that we brought in. So whenever you are appending, the ideal case is that all of your data that you want to append, that you want to stack one on top of the other, should have the same column names. Not necessarily the same structure, but they should have the same column names. You might not have arranged the column the same way, but just make sure that the names are the same. Power Query will figure out the position of each of the columns. So that answers one of your questions. Then the other question about your CRM, if you have a custom built CRM in the business, can you use Power Query? Yes, so long as your CRM has an API. So normally for most custom built systems, there will be an API that the developers can provide you with. So if they have developed an API for that system, you can use that API with whatever access token that you have been given to now work with it in Power Query. So you go the web route. That's I'm using the web option for the last example that we saw. And then they will give you a construct as to how the URL would be, because within the URL, you would already have something like the access token. You might have some other information that would fit in there. So they will give you something that works. If they can provide you with an API that works like that, definitely you can pull that data into Power Query. Your last question, you have a case of a lookup that you want to be able to do the lookup based on two columns, if I got it correctly. So you want
Yes.
a unique combination of the reference code and your GL codes. So that is possible. So even in your VLOOKUP, for example, you can achieve something like that. So what that would mean is that, so let's say that let me see if I can. If there are other questions, we can come up with it. So we'll close this session in like 6 minutes. Let me just try to create something here. Okay, so let's say we do this and then so and I have hopefully this makes sense. So May, April, April. Let me do yeah, yeah. So, but this will be Vine 3D and 120. I'll just fix these numbers. Okay, so let's say we have a case like this. We have the period that the transaction happened. So you can, this is the period, and then this is the buyer, something like that. And then let's say this is the product, and this is the amount. And now we have another table that has, so let me just do May Solomon Apple, and then May Solomon April Titilayo Baniga. So we have, so this is the master table. This one is the master table here. And this is the table that you want to populate. So we want to know what amounts, what transaction amounts can be tied to Solomon for when Solomon bought Apple in May, something like that. So we can do, if I try to do a, let's try a VLOOKUP. So I do a VLOOKUP. So what I would do with a VLOOKUP is this. I can create a concatenation of these items. So I say that May, that would be the lookup value, May and Solomon and Apple. So I'm creating that as a string. Then I put a comma here. So the table array will be this. Let me do this. Let's do an X lookup first. So this guy and this guy. Then that's the lookup value. The lookup array will now be the same thing. So it's this guy concatenated with this guy, concatenated with this guy. That's the lookup array. So let me just show you what this would look like here first. So if I come in here, and I do this, if I highlight this, you see what the result is like. So the lookup value is now something like May Solomon Apple. If I come here to the lookup array, if I highlight this guy, so this is May Solomon Apple, April Tislaya Vanga, May Solomon Vanga, I like that. So which means that something like, so the lookup value will map to the lookup array. So if I do that, then I can come here and say that this is what I want to return. And I close my bracket, I hit enter. So this picks 191 here. If I copy this down, April Titilayo Vinegar. So this is 219. So if I change this to May Solomon, this, if I get my spelling correctly, so this will update to 120. So that's a way to do a kind of a complex lookup. But again, it's just by matching up the records. You string them up to create a unique identifier, and that should solve the case. I'm not sure if the questioner is still on the call.
Yes, I dropped off. Okay,
Okay.
I think I understood what you just said. Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
you're
Yes.
welcome. Is there any
So
difference
do you,
between Power Query in Excel, a second, and the one in Power BI? No much difference. So a lot of the features are the same, except for a few cases like you don't want to load the data. Can you load to a query or not? But for all of the workings, for what is possible, they are nearly the same. I'm not sure there's any other question on the chart. Not sure. All right. Any other thing? Last thing before we close?
So, do you offer like Power BI training, basically?
Yes, we do. So let me give you, you can chat up on this contact. And so we talk about that outside of here. 3617 0780 So the number is on the chat. You can pick it from there.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other thing before we close? Oh, so thank you everybody for joining this episode. We hope to connect again in 2 weeks. If you're not yet on our community, yes, the recording will be available hopefully tonight or tomorrow. We can catch up for those of us that will miss some part of this session. Thanks again, everyone, and we see you when we see. Bye for now.
All right, bye. Thank you.